I discovered my best friend forged my signature on $1 million deal. Let me take you back to where it all began, because to understand the betrayal, you need to know the foundation it was built on. My name is Sophia Grant, and I've always been the kind of person who believes in order, logic, and numbers. I grew up in a quiet town tucked between pine-covered hills in upstate New York, the kind of place where everyone knows which truck belongs to which driveway, and where Sunday dinners are non-negotiable. My dad was a mechanic who smelled perpetually of motor oil and old coffee. My mom was a nurse whose idea of rest was folding laundry while watching reruns. From them I learned that discipline wasn't optional, it was oxygen. "Nothing comes easy, Soph," Dad would say, ruffling my hair with those grease-stained hands. "You want something, you earn it." So I did. I earned good grades, earned scholarships, earned respect. Even my teenage rebellion was scheduled between debate club meetings. By the time I reached the University of Washington, I had traded my small-town shyness for quiet determination. I majored in accounting, not glamorous but solid. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't betray you. At least that's what I thought. Then there was Lena Voss. She swept into my life like color flooding a black and white photograph. I still remember move-in day. I was unpacking my textbooks alphabetically when the dorm door burst open, and a whirlwind in designer sunglasses rolled in, dragging 2 oversized suitcases. "Hey, roommate, let's make this year epic," she announced, popping open a bottle of cheap champagne right there on the carpet. That was Lena, spontaneous, loud, dazzling. She studied marketing but majored in charisma. She could talk a vending machine into giving her 2 sodas for 1 coin. I was cautious. She was chaos. And somehow it worked. We became inseparable. Study buddies by day, partners in harmless mischief by night. When I missed home, she dragged me to quirky Seattle cafes until laughter drowned my homesickness. When she failed a midterm, I stayed up all night drilling her on concepts she barely cared about. "You're my rock, Soph," she'd whispered dramatically. "You keep me grounded." I believed her. 4 years passed in a blur of exams, caffeine, and friendship bracelets that we swore we'd never take off. Graduation day arrived under a silver sky. We tossed our caps together, shouting promises of future success. She wanted to conquer the marketing world. I wanted stability. And somehow we thought we could chase both dreams side by side. When we stayed in Seattle after graduation, it felt like destiny. I joined Harlan & Associates, a polished accounting firm with glass walls and espresso machines that never stopped hissing. It was the kind of job people back home bragged about. Lena, meanwhile, jumped between startups like stepping stones, 1 week branding a juice company, the next promoting tech gadgets. She was always chasing the next big thing, always one risky investment away from a miracle. Our paths were different, but our friendship stayed strong. Friday nights were sacred. Takeout Thai, Netflix, and her stories about ambitious investors and impossible dreams. "Mark my words," she'd say, raising her glass of cheap wine. "I'm going to be a millionaire by 30. I'd laugh, roll my eyes, and secretly admire her fire. It began 6 months ago, in the heart of Seattle's endless rain. Lena showed up at my apartment drenched, mascara streaking like war paint. "My startup tanked," she blurted before I could even take her coat. "Investors bailed, and I'm drowning in debt." The startup, InnoTech Ventures, was supposed to revolutionize sustainable fashion sourcing. I had even helped her build the first budget spreadsheet. She'd poured everything into it, time, pride, and credit cards. "I just need a loan, Soph," she whispered. $5,000. I'll pay you back the second round of funding hits." I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money that night. "Pay me back when you can," I said, and meant it. She hugged me tightly. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Weeks went by. Lena's text turned upbeat again. New investors lined up. Things are turning around. But I began noticing small oddities. She'd forget her wallet at dinner. She started crashing on my couch after late nights at the office. She borrowed my laptop to send emails saying hers was acting up. I brushed it off. She was my friend. Then came the call. It was a Tuesday, tax season chaos swirling through the office. Phones rang, printers jammed, someone had spilled coffee near the server room again. I was deep in client spreadsheets when Mr. Harlan's secretary buzzed me. "Sophia, the boss wants to see you. Now." My stomach dropped. Mr. Harlan's office overlooked Elliott Bay, a panoramic view of ferries gliding through mist. Normally it calmed me. Not that day. He didn't smile. Didn't even offer me a seat at first. Then he pushed a thick manila folder across his desk. "The bank called," he said quietly. "There's a loan application in your name, $1 million, for something called InnoTech Ventures. They used your apartment, your savings, even your 401k as collateral." For a moment, I thought I misheard. I opened the folder. My name everywhere. My social security number, my signature. Only I hadn't signed anything. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of his desk to stay upright. "This isn't me," I whispered. "That's not my handwriting." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "The bank traced the submission to your home network. If it's fraud, we'll help you. But Sophia, this could destroy your credit and your career. You need to fix it fast." I walked home through sheets of rain, shoes squelching, the folder clutched to my chest like a lifeline. Every step echoed with disbelief. Who could know my personal details, my tax ID, my accounts? Only someone who had been inside my home. Someone who had borrowed my laptop. Someone who had promised she'd pay me back. Lena, I breathed into the storm. I called her the second I reached the lobby. I need you to come over, now. She arrived 40 minutes later, shaking off her umbrella, concern painted on her face. What's going on? You sound freaked out. I handed her the folder. Explain this. She flipped through the papers, color draining from her cheeks. Soph, this is crazy. Who would do that to you? You tell me. The IP traces to my Wi-Fi? Innotech Ventures. You stayed here. She blinked fast, eyes glossy. You think I did this? Oh my God, Sophia. How could you even... Then tell me how my signature ended up on $1 million loan. She backed away, voice shaking. Maybe someone hacked you. Let me help, please. I'll call the bank. But the tremor in her voice gave her away. Guilt. She grabbed her coat and stormed out before I could say another word. The door slammed, leaving silence thick as fog. That night I didn't sleep. Every shadow in my apartment felt like a secret. I changed my passwords, froze my credit, called the bank, but the funds were already gone. By morning, disbelief turned into purpose. If Lena had forged my name, I was going to prove it. That was the day I met Riley Thompson, the private investigator who would unravel everything. The morning after Lena stormed out of my apartment, I woke up to silence thick enough to choke on. My phone was full of missed calls, unknown numbers, the bank, even a voicemail from my boss reminding me to handle this situation quickly. I didn't even bother with breakfast. My appetite was gone, replaced by a pit of dread that grew with every breath. I sat at my kitchen table, the manila folder open in front of me, rereading every word of that forged loan document as if understanding it would somehow undo it. But the ink didn't lie. The signature was there, mine, only not mine. It wasn't just the signature that unsettled me. The precision of the details, the account numbers, my employment verification, even copies of my pay stubs, all pulled directly from my files. It was intimate. Whoever did this knew me better than anyone. They'd been inside my home, my computer, my trust. I tried to tell myself it couldn't be Lena, that maybe it was some elaborate scam or data breach, but deep down I knew. The truth had already started to rot inside me. By noon, I was pacing the living room, clutching my phone like a lifeline. That's when I made the call that would change everything. His name was Riley Thompson, a private investigator recommended by one of the senior partners at my firm. The kind of man who'd seen too many lies to be impressed by them. Come by my office, he said, voice low and gravelly. Bring everything you've got. Riley's office was tucked above a pawn shop downtown, the kind of place that smelled of stale coffee and nicotine. His desk was buried under piles of case files, and his tie looked like it had survived a few divorces. He studied me over his glasses as I explained everything. The friendship, the loan, the confrontation, and the gnawing doubt that Lena was behind it all. So, you're telling me your best friend forged your name on $1 million deal? He asked, scribbling notes in a yellow pad. Yes, I said, my voice breaking on the word friend. At least I think so. I just can't prove it yet, he grunted. Don't worry. Paper trails are like ghosts. They always leave footprints. Leave the folder with me. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief. Someone was on my side. Someone believed me. That relief didn't last long. By the next morning, the situation escalated. The bank called again, this time more aggressively. Ms. Grant, the funds have been released. We'll begin payment collection next month. I tried to explain it was fraud, that I hadn't signed anything, but the representative's tone was polite steel. If this is fraud, please file a police report. Until then, you're liable. Liable. That word echoed in my skull like a curse. I could feel my professional life crumbling beneath it. In accounting, reputation is everything. Trust is currency. Once it's gone, you're bankrupt, no matter how many numbers you can balance. At the office, the whispers had already started. People avoided eye contact. A colleague who used to chat with me every morning suddenly kept his earbuds in. I caught a snippet in the break room. She's the one who's under investigation, right? Mr. Harlan called me into his office that afternoon. His tone was calm, but the message wasn't. Sophia, I have to put you on leave. Paid, for now. Get this resolved and we'll talk about reinstatement. Do you think I did it? I asked quietly. He hesitated, and that hesitation was worse than any accusation. I think you're a good person in a bad situation. But clients ask questions, and our name's on the line. When I left the building, the Seattle sky had already darkened into that familiar bruised gray. The rain felt colder that day, heavier, like the city itself had turned against me. I walked aimlessly, umbrella forgotten, until I ended up at the pier. I watched ferries glide past, lights flickering on the waves, and I realized how small I was in all of this, how quickly your life can flip from predictable to unrecognizable. 3 days later, Riley called. Got something, he said. I met him at his office. He handed me a folder thicker than before. Inside were printouts, emails, screenshots, bank statements, things I didn't understand at first. Your friend's company, Innotech Ventures, he began, is still active. And it's linked to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The loan funds? Transferred there in 2 installments. Account holder, Lena Voss. My heart stopped. You're sure? As sure as a tax form, he said. Also your laptop, remember how she used it? I had a tech guy pull the access logs. The digital signature on those loan documents came from your IP address, yes, but the device login was under a guest account. The same one she used. I sat there staring at the evidence. The room felt too small. Every word I'd ever said to Lena replayed in my mind. The promises, the trust, the laughter. All of it suddenly tainted. Why would she do this? I whispered. Riley shrugged, lighting a cigarette. Money, desperation, jealousy. People don't need noble reasons to destroy each other. I left his office numb. Outside, the streets were slick with rain, neon reflections stretching across puddles. I walked home without feeling my feet, my thoughts circling the same impossible truth. My best friend had turned me into collateral. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat in the dark, my living room scattered with papers. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the wind outside rattling the windows. At 3 a.m., I opened my laptop and started scrolling through old messages with Lena. I read every love you sis, every you're my person, and each one cut deeper. Then I found one message from 2 months ago that made me pause. It was short, casual. Hey, can I use your tax software real quick? My files acting up, my chest tightened. She'd used my credentials to log in. That's how she got my tax ID. My hands trembled as I pieced it together. The access, the timing, the lies. Every breadcrumb led back to her. By morning, anger had replaced shock. I called her, no answer. I texted her, nothing. So I went to her loft. Her building was in Belltown, sleek, modern, glass elevators and hallways that smelled like expensive candles. I knocked, silence, then footsteps. When she opened the door, she looked different, disheveled, exhausted. Guilt was written across her face like smeared makeup. Sophia? She started, but I cut her off. I know, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Riley found everything. The transfers. The fake documents. The IP logs. It's over, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You forged my signature on $1 million deal. I snapped. You used my name, my life, my future, and you didn't mean it? She collapsed onto the couch, covering her face. I was desperate. The investors pulled out. I had debts, real bad ones. I thought if I could just make one big move, I could fix it all before anyone found out. And what about me? I asked, voice breaking. Did you plan to fix me too? She looked up, her expression twisted between shame and defiance. You had everything, Soph. The career, the savings, the stability. I thought you wouldn't even notice for a while. I was going to pay it back, double even. I just needed time. The words hit harder than any confession. It wasn't just greed, it was resentment. My so-called best friend hadn't envied my friendship. She'd envied my life. I turned away, tears burning my eyes. You didn't just steal my money. You stole my trust. You stole the version of you I believed in. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said sharply. You don't get to fix this with an apology. When I walked out of her loft, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound of her sobbing behind me was already burned into my memory. That night, Riley helped me file the police report. The words felt surreal as I said them. Identity theft, forgery, fraud. Terms I'd used professionally now applied to my own life. He assured me the bank would freeze the remaining funds and launch a full investigation. But he also warned me, this won't be quick. Or clean. He was right. The next few days blurred together in a haze of phone calls, legal documents, and insomnia. The bank demanded proof. The police needed statements. My parents called, worried. I lied and told them everything was being handled. I couldn't bear to hear the disappointment in their voices if they knew I'd trusted someone capable of this. By the end of that week, Lena's silence was deafening. Her social media vanished. Her phone disconnected. It was like she'd evaporated, taking my peace of mind with her. But she hadn't disappeared completely. A week later, Riley called again. His tone was grim. You might want to sit down, he said. Lena tried to move the funds again, this time to a crypto account. The transfer flagged internationally. She's not just hiding money anymore. She's running. I stared at the wall, every trace of denial gone. The person I'd trusted most had turned into my worst nightmare. And for the first time in my life, I realized numbers could lie, when the wrong hands wrote them. I didn't know what it felt like to have your life collapse overnight until it actually happened. One moment, I was an accountant with a spotless record, a tidy apartment, and a stable career. And the next, I was a fraud suspect, a liability, a headline waiting to happen. The week after I filed the police report, everything seemed to unravel faster than I could catch my breath. My email filled with messages from the bank demanding clarification, from the firm's HR department asking for statements, and from unknown addresses sending me veiled threats about paying what I owed. I stopped answering the phone. Every ring felt like a reminder that my name no longer belonged to me. Mr. Harlan's secretary called one morning to say the firm was reevaluating my position. That word, reevaluating, felt like a death sentence. I knew what it meant. Clients didn't want to work with someone under investigation for financial misconduct, even if she was innocent. Reputation in accounting was like glass. Once it cracked, no amount of glue could make it whole again. I sat on my couch staring at the rain streaking down my window, wondering how a friendship I'd treasured for a decade could destroy everything I'd built. Riley called to check in. We're close, he said. The evidence is airtight, but you need to be patient. Patience. That word meant nothing when you were bleeding credibility by the day. He told me Lena had been sighted leaving a casino on the outskirts of the city, that she was still using my name to talk to people in finance circles. She's desperate, he said. Desperate people make mistakes. We'll catch her. I wanted to believe him, but belief didn't stop the late-night panic attacks or the bills stacking up on my counter. My credit score had cratered, my savings were frozen under investigation, and my firm's paycheck had stopped coming. I sold my car to stay afloat and canceled my lease, moving into a small sublet on the edge of Capitol Hill. The walls there were thinner, the neighbors louder, and I slept with the lights on more often than I'd admit. It was around then that the messages started. At first, they came through email, short, frantic lines that made my stomach twist. Please, Soph, don't do this. I can fix it. Then I didn't mean to hurt you. They're after me, too. I blocked the address, but new ones appeared. Then came the texts from unknown numbers, always the same pleading tone, always signed with an L. I deleted them without replying, but each one chipped away at the fragile anger keeping me upright. Riley warned me not to respond. If she contacts you, log it, don't engage. Let the authorities handle it. But the authorities were slow, drowning in bureaucracy and paperwork. I was drowning too, just in a different kind of water. Every time I walked into a coffee shop or passed someone with her same blonde hair, my chest tightened. Seattle was big enough for both of us, but it didn't feel like it anymore. Then one night, around 11, there was a knock on my door. I froze. My building had a security code. No one could just walk in. The knock came again, 3 soft taps. I grabbed the nearest object I could find, a ceramic mug, and crept toward the door. Who is it? I called, my voice trembling. It's me, came the voice from the other side. Soph, please, open up. Just let me talk, Lena. For a moment, I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, to throw the door open and demand answers, but another part of me, a colder, more rational part, knew that if I opened that door, I might lose more than money this time. I stepped back, heart hammering. You need to leave, I said. I've already called the police. You don't understand, she cried. Her voice cracked. They're threatening me. The people I borrowed from, they're going to kill me if I don't pay them back. I never meant to drag you into this. I just needed a way out. Her words hit me like ice. There was fear in her tone, but I couldn't tell if it was real or just another performance. I thought about the years of laughter, the late-night talks, the promises of forever. Then I thought about the forged signature, the sleepless nights, the headlines. You should have thought about that before you stole my life, I said quietly. She banged on the door, sobbing. Sophia, please. I can fix it. I can give it all back. Leave, I said again. The banging stopped. Silence stretched for a long moment before I heard footsteps retreating down the hallway. I sank to the floor, shaking so hard I dropped the mug. It shattered beside me and I started crying. Not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. There's a special kind of grief reserved for losing someone who's still alive. The next morning, Riley called with an update. Good news, he said. The police issued a warrant. She can't go far. He didn't know how close she'd already been. I told him, and he swore under his breath. You did the right thing not letting her in, he said. She's cornered, and cornered people bite. Days later, it happened. The police called to confirm they'd found Lena at a downtown motel, caught trying to move what remained of the stolen funds. She didn't resist arrest. When they brought her in, she'd already confessed to everything, how she'd used my laptop, copied my signature, and wired the loan to her offshore account to pay off gambling debts. Riley texted me one sentence. It's over. But it didn't feel over. When I went to the police station to give my final statement, they let me see her through the glass window of the interrogation room. She looked smaller somehow, her expensive clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit, her hair tied back. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked up and our eyes met. For the first time, there was no charm, no excuses, just shame. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming a single word. Sorry. I turned away before she could see me cry. The days that followed were a strange blur of relief and emptiness. The media never picked up the story, thankfully, but within the industry, word spread fast. I was the accountant who got scammed by her best friend, a cautionary tale whispered in office corridors. My job at Harlan & Associates didn't survive the scandal, even after the truth came out. Mr. Harlan called to say, "It's not about you, Sophia. It's about perception." I thanked him for his honesty, hung up and deleted every email related to the firm. Riley helped me handle the civil side of things. The bank reversed the loan, the courts began restitution proceedings, and my credit slowly began to crawl back from the grave. But none of it felt like victory. Justice doesn't feel like winning. It feels like losing slower. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Lena. It was handwritten, shaky. She apologized again, said she'd been blinded by jealousy, by debt, by desperation. She said prison would be her wake-up call. I read the first paragraph and stopped. I didn't need her repentance to heal. I just needed distance. I folded the letter, slipped it into a drawer, and never opened it again. Sometimes I still think about her, about how our lives diverged from that dorm room where it all began. Two girls full of dreams, one obsessed with security, the other chasing chaos. Maybe we were always heading toward this collision. Maybe trust is just another form of blindness. But I've learned something through all of this. Betrayal doesn't start with the moment someone stabs you in the back. It starts the moment you ignore the little signs that they might. Now, months later, I'm rebuilding. I found a new job at a smaller firm where no one knows my name beyond what's on my badge. I rent a smaller apartment with fewer memories. I take walks in the rain without an umbrella, letting it wash over me. There's something cleansing about it, about realizing that even after everything, the lies, the losses, I'm still standing. The storm didn't destroy me. It just stripped away the illusion that friendship is unbreakable. Some wounds don't heal the way you expect. They close quietly, leaving scars that whisper reminders of who you were and who you'll never let yourself be again. The day of the court hearing arrived with a gray sky that matched the heaviness in my chest. I had barely slept the night before, my mind looping through every memory of Lena, the laughter, the secrets, the betrayal that had turned it all into ash. I sat outside the courthouse clutching a folder of documents Riley had prepared, bank statements, email screenshots, proof of the forgery. My hands trembled even though the case was straightforward. The law was on my side, but justice I had learned was never simple. It didn't heal you. It just documented the wound. When I walked into the courtroom, Lena was already there, seated beside her lawyer. For a moment, it was like seeing a ghost. Her blonde hair was dull now, her eyes hollow, her hands nervously twisting a tissue. She looked nothing like the girl who once danced barefoot in our dorm room, champagne in hand. For a heartbeat, pity flickered in me, but it was quickly replaced by anger. She had chosen this. Every lie, every stolen cent, every sleepless night I'd endured, it all came from her choices. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The air was thick, every shuffle of paper amplified. My attorney, a calm woman named Megan, stood beside me, radiating quiet confidence. The prosecution began by laying out the facts. The defendant, Ms. Lena Voss, forged her friend's signature to secure a $1 million business loan under false pretenses. She transferred the funds to a personal account offshore and attempted to conceal the fraud by manipulating digital records. Each word landed like a hammer. Lena didn't lift her eyes once. When it was my turn to testify, my voice felt foreign, shaky, but determined. I told them everything. How we met, how I trusted her, how she had used that trust to destroy me. I thought she was family, I said, and my voice cracked. I lent her money, I gave her access to my home, my computer, my life. I didn't think I needed to guard myself against someone I loved. I glanced at her then, and for the first time, she looked up. Our eyes met, and I saw tears there, real ones. But they didn't move me anymore. Lena's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of circumstance. A woman crushed by financial desperation, manipulated by predatory lenders, blinded by fear. She made a terrible mistake, he said, but it was not born of malice. It was born of panic, I wanted to scream. Mistake? A mistake was forgetting to pay a bill. This was a betrayal carved with precision and patience. Then Lena spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, she said. Sophia, I never meant to hurt you. I was drowning, and you were the only person I thought could save me. I thought if I could make it work, if the business succeeded, I'd pay everything back. I told myself it wasn't really stealing, just borrowing time. She paused, trembling. But I know now it was more than money. I stole your trust, and that's something I can't repay. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because forgiveness wasn't the same as healing, and words couldn't rebuild what she had burned. The judge's expression didn't waver. When the verdict came, it was clear and final. Guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, identity theft. Her sentence: 2 years probation, full restitution of the stolen funds, and community service. I expected to feel relief, but instead I felt empty. Justice wasn't victory. It was survival, formalized. After court, I stepped outside into the cold. The rain had started again, soft at first, then heavier. Riley joined me, lighting a cigarette under his umbrella. It's done, he said quietly. She won't touch your life again. I nodded, though the words didn't sink in. I thought it would feel different, I admitted. It never does, he said. People think closure means peace, but it just means the paperwork's over. He offered a faint smile. You did good, Sophia. You stood up for yourself. That's more than most people manage after being burned. I thanked him and walked toward the parking lot, the sound of my heels echoing on wet pavement. Every step felt heavier than the last. The courthouse loomed behind me like a monument to endings. I thought of the first time Lena and I met, of her laughter, her wild optimism, and the way she'd once called me her rock. Somewhere deep down, I still miss that version of her, the one who hadn't yet been eaten alive by greed. But that girl was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Over the following weeks, the media attention faded, and life settled into a strange new rhythm. The bank restored my accounts. The firm, however, did not take me back. Mr. Harlan sent a short email thanking me for my years of professionalism and wishing me well in my future endeavors. Translation: we can't afford the risk of association. I didn't even reply. I started applying to smaller firms, local businesses that valued integrity over image. I took freelance bookkeeping jobs, anything that would keep the bills paid. My days were quieter, lonelier. I'd lost more than a friend. I'd lost the version of myself that believed friendship could never hurt you. But healing has a way of sneaking in quietly, disguised as routine. Morning coffee, a long walk, a single day without checking your email in fear. About a month later, I got a call from a local accounting office that had seen my resume. They offered me a position, modest pay, but honest work. My new boss, a middle-aged woman named Clara, told me on my first day, "We all make mistakes, Sophia. It's not the fall that defines you. It's what you build after." I smiled politely, but something about her words stuck. At night, I sometimes reread the letter Lena sent from probation. In it, she talked about attending therapy, about understanding the roots of her jealousy, her compulsive need to prove herself. "I saw you as everything I wasn't," she wrote. "And instead of being proud of you, I wanted to be you." I never wrote back. Not out of hatred, but because there was nothing left to say. One rainy evening, months later, I passed the old apartment where we'd spent countless nights talking about our futures. The lights were off now, the window blinds drawn. I stood there for a while, letting the sound of the rain fill the silence. In another life, we might have stayed friends. In another life, maybe I could have saved her before she drowned. But this was the life we had, and I had finally learned to stop rescuing people who were determined to sink. By the time I got home, the storm had calmed, and the air smelled clean again. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights shimmer through the mist. For the first time in a long while, I felt still. The pain hadn't disappeared. It probably never would. But it had softened into something bearable. Something human. Trust, I realized, isn't about never being betrayed. It's about finding the courage to open your heart again, even when you know what it costs. And as I watched the rain fade into fog, I made myself a quiet promise. I would move forward. I would rebuild. And I would never, ever let anyone sign my name again. It's strange how time moves differently after devastation. The first few months felt endless. Each day a repetition of the last. Wake up, breathe, remember, ache, repeat. But slowly, without me realizing, the rhythm began to shift. The silence that once felt suffocating started to feel like peace. The ache became a dull memory instead of an open wound. It didn't happen all at once, but piece by piece, I started to rebuild the life Lena had shattered. I moved into a smaller apartment in Ballard, a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew my name. It wasn't as luxurious as my old place, but it was mine. Clean walls, secondhand furniture, and a window that looked out onto the bay. I painted the living room myself, pale blue, the color of calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I could breathe again without flinching at every notification on my phone or every unknown number that popped up on the screen. The chaos had finally gone quiet. Work came next. Clara, my new boss, was patient and kind. She didn't care about the headlines or the whispers. She just cared that I was good at my job, and I was. The small accounting firm where I now worked was nothing like the high-rise prestige of Harlan and Associates. There were no glass walls or suits or endless hierarchies. Just 4 people, a pot of burnt coffee, and a shared commitment to keeping small businesses afloat. It was humbling, grounding. In a way, it felt more real. I'd lost my reputation in the corporate world, but I'd gained something far more valuable: perspective. Sometimes I still caught myself glancing over my shoulder when I walked to work, half expecting to see Lena's familiar silhouette in the distance. Old habits die hard, but she never came. The last I heard, she'd moved back east to live with her mother, working part-time and attending counseling as part of her probation. Riley told me she was keeping her head down, paying restitution bit by bit. He asked once if I wanted updates about her progress. I told him no. I didn't need to know. Closure didn't come from watching her change. It came from knowing I no longer needed her apology to move forward. On quiet evenings, I'd sit by the window with a glass of wine and think about the years we'd shared. The dorm room with its peeling posters, the nights spent laughing until sunrise, the promise that we'd grow old as sisters by choice. I didn't erase those memories. I couldn't. They were part of me, scars etched into the map of who I'd become. But I learned not to live inside them. They belonged to a version of me who believed that love alone could keep people honest, who thought loyalty was unbreakable. That girl was gone. The woman I'd become knew better. She understood that trust wasn't something you gave blindly. It was something people had to earn and keep earning every single day. My parents came to visit one weekend in the spring. They hadn't seen me since everything happened, and when they walked into my apartment, I saw the worry still lingering in their eyes. My mom hugged me longer than usual, her hands trembling slightly. "You look better," she said softly. "Lighter." "I feel better," I told her, and it was true. My dad, ever the pragmatist, looked around the apartment, nodded approvingly, and said, "Small place, but solid. Nothing wrong with starting over." Then he paused, his voice softening. "I'm proud of you, kiddo. Not for what you lost, for how you handled it." We spent that evening eating takeout and watching old movies, laughing like we hadn't in years. It struck me how healing didn't always come through grand gestures or perfect justice. It came quietly, in moments like that, when life finally stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like living again. There were still nights when I'd wake up from dreams of Lena's face, or of the courthouse, or of the first day she betrayed me. Sometimes I'd wake in a cold sweat, her voice echoing in my head, "You're my rock, Soph." Other times it was her broken whisper in the courtroom, "I'm sorry." But as the months passed, those dreams lost their sharpness. They became softer, like echoes fading into the distance. I stopped waking up angry. I stopped replaying every moment, wondering what I could have done differently. Because the truth is, betrayal isn't something you can prevent. It's something you survive. A year after the trial, I got an email from Riley. The subject line was simple: final update. He told me that Lena had completed her probation, that she'd paid most of the restitution, and that she'd moved out of state. She's trying to start over too, he wrote. I stared at the message for a long time before replying with just 2 words. Good for her. And I meant it. That night, I went for a walk down by the pier, the same one I'd wandered aimlessly after discovering the forgery. The city lights reflected off the water, soft and gold, and for the first time, I felt a kind of peace that didn't feel forced. I leaned on the railing, letting the wind tangle my hair, and whispered into the night, "You can forgive without forgetting." It wasn't a declaration for her. It was for me. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about absolving the other person. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about everything I'd lost, and everything I'd gained. I had lost a best friend, yes, but I had gained something deeper: self-trust. The kind that doesn't waver, that doesn't need validation from anyone else. The kind that lets you walk away from the fire, knowing that even if it burns you, it can't destroy you. Today, I still keep the manila folder that started it all. It sits in a drawer, sealed and untouched. I could have thrown it away, but I keep it as a reminder, not of what was done to me, but of what I survived. Sometimes I take it out, run my fingers over the edges, and think, this is where I stopped being naive. This is where I started becoming myself. I don't hate Lena anymore. Hate takes too much energy, and I've learned that peace is a choice you make every day. I hope she's found her own way to redemption. I hope she never forgets what she did, not out of guilt, but out of understanding. Because if I can learn to live with my scars, maybe she can learn to live with hers. The past doesn't define me anymore. It shaped me, yes, but it doesn't own me. My name, once forged and stolen, now belongs fully to me again. And I intend to protect it, not with walls, but with wisdom. Because now I know that trust isn't about who you let in. It's about knowing you'll be okay if they ever walk out. As I turn off the lights and look out at the city that once felt like a battlefield, I can finally smile. I've rebuilt from the ruins, not perfectly, but honestly, and that's enough. My story didn't end with betrayal. It began again with survival.